We're not talking Meghan Markle, but we are talking The Crown, episode 1 and 2 of season 2, right here at AfterBuzz.
You're tuning into the destination for TV superfan discussion, AfterBuzz TV. And now, let the buzz begin.
We're not talking Meghan Markle yet.
Markle, no?
I don't know. Who knows? Now that she's a royal, I think it's Markle. Like,
Okay,
I feel like it's Meghan Markle.
We'll work with that.
Is it just Markle?
I think it's Markle.
I don't know. I'm sure someone will comment and let us know. And of course, you can just tag each one of us. I am Tehran, literally at I am Tehran, all across the social atmosphere. And alongside the wonderful, amazing, talented, and intelligent.
Say hi, Tsahai. Hey, everybody. Good to be back. My name is Tsahai, and you can find me on social media at Say Hi Tsahai. That's SayHiTsahai.
Throw in that silent T and let them know what it's about.
That's right.
That's what we're doing, and that's what The Crown is this season. It's showing us what it's all about. Episode 1 and 2.
Marriage is falling apart.
It's falling apart, but it's not. I mean, so much is going on. It's literally a misadventure, and episode 2 is Company of Men this season, and it was a long wait. I felt like it was a long wait, but it was really just a year.
Yeah, but I mean,
it felt like a long year.
It felt like forever.
A lot happened.
Everyone's super excited that it's back, and these first 2 episodes starting right out the gate, I was happy. I was like, okay.
They picked up the pace significantly in season 2.
Definitely.
So season 2 starts off with a bang. It starts off, we already are engulfed in the world of The Crown. We've already seen season 1, and now we're just drawn into the characters. They didn't waste time with character development. We were very familiar with Elizabeth. We were very familiar with Philip, and the whole circus of what's going on.
Yeah, I love the fact that they start with already that we know that they're still unhappy in their marriage. Like, nothing has gotten better. It's actually gotten worse. And she steps to him like, Philip, what's up? What's going to make you happy? Like, how can we make this better?
100%. That's episode 1, Misadventure. It starts off right away where we're 5 months ahead. So we're actually in 1957. And it's after Philip comes back from his trip, and Queen Elizabeth just speaks so frank and says, divorce is not an option. What's it going to take to make this work? And I'm sure a lot of couples really related to that, because especially in an older generation, because divorce is very, like, for us, it's a common thing. But
all day, every day.
2-3 generations ago, it was very uncommon, and it could leave families destroyed and distraught.
Right. And especially, like, here it is, her sister wanted to marry a man who had previously been divorced, and she wouldn't let that happen. It's not even an option for her. So she just basically has to suffer, but she not in silence, fortunately. She's like, listen, let's talk. Help me help you. Because you can see, the funny thing is they're having these problems, but you can still see that they love each other a lot.
They do. And we see that when it comes back in episode 2, which we're also going to talk about. But back in episode 1, we see that their relationship is worse than it was after season 1. Because season 1 ends, the relationship is clearly on the outs.
Yeah.
Winston Churchill has departed. A lot of ending, but it's also a lot of what's next in beginning, right?
Right.
So we come back and we see that the relationship is actually a little bit worse for wear, and the royal couple is not getting along,
right?
And they're not even trying to pretend anymore, which is something they used to do. Philip is clearly unhappy and complaining all the time, something that we complained about, his complaining in season 1.
Right. And then here it is, her mother suggests, hey, you should have Philip do this Commonwealth tour. And for, some people would think, okay, is this a good thing on a marriage? Like, for distance, will distance make the heart grow fonder? Or will it
make the heart forget?
Right, exactly. And Philip was actually very good at forgetting.
He was good at forgetting until we see the message at the end. So let's just stick to season episode 1.
I'm jumping all around.
Let's just stick to episode 1, because episode 1 had a lot of things happen.
Yes.
So let's start off with this agreement between Elizabeth and Philip.
Yeah.
That's how the show even starts. They have a conversation where Elizabeth frankly says, what is it going to take?
Right.
And we never hear Philip's answer.
Not at all. Because, does he even know what to say? Does he even feel comfortable speaking at this point? I feel like by this time he's been so worn down. He's like, listen, whatever I say, it still is not going to be what you want. And we're here because of everything that you want. So I'm just going to stay silent. Which is kind of a cop-out, I think.
And I thought it was very good how they jumped forward and then flashed us back
to happier times.
5 months Well, it was kind of happier because we see them at a ceremony, and Philip orders all the servants to turn around. And we see this is actually a reoccurring theme, is that the servants of the castle keep getting in their way.
Yeah.
Whether Philip's trying to explain something and they remove stuff, or they come into the bedroom, whatever it is. But it's also a subtle hint that the life of the royal is getting in the way of their relationship.
Of their private life, that they're still trying to hold on to a little bit of privacy, but you're royal now. You can't happen. You can't have that at all.
You have no privacy.
None
Your
at all.
privacy does not exist. So we see Philip order all the servants to turn around, and then in a sneak, very romantic, very cute, flirtatious move, kiss Elizabeth on the neck, which
I
is
thought that was so sweet when he was zipping up her dress. Yes, I thought that was great. But it also showed like
because she gave consent. That's why it was sweet.
Yes,
I just want to
but
point
also
out.
shows that Philip does have some power. Like
Sure.
when Philip needs to boss up, he does, and we see that in the second episode too. But so it, he's not just the man behind the woman. He does have some power, and he knows that.
But at the same time, Philip does feel he feels very slighted in his position as the Queen's regent.
Yeah.
And the Queen's consort and the Queen's side. It's like you're on the side. You're Philip on the side.
Right.
He's the Duke of Edinburgh.
So he's
not
kind of
the
like
king.
her. Are you saying he's like her side piece, kind of?
He's not the side piece because they're married, but
Right.
he's definitely
Figuratively, not literally.
Even in, let's say, the presidency, we see a President Obama and Michelle Obama, whose importance is very significant
Right.
in the people. With King Philip, he's in the back. He's
Right.
not in the forefront at all.
Right, until this Commonwealth tour, so it gave him his time to shine,
And they
it
did
shows-
send him on a tour, and
Yeah.
that's something that Elizabeth's mom suggested. And
But Elizabeth was kind of like, I don't know if this is a good
Iffy,
idea. But
yeah.
and her mom was like, you're welcome for
Exactly.
doing this, and now your husband looks so happy.
and
But
she didn't seem happy
No,
when the mom
because-
suggested, when the mom
No.
was basically saying, I'm the one who suggested it.
Yeah.
You're welcome for this idea.
Yeah.
She's like, bitch, I didn't want him to go.
Exactly, because my husband is out here with ballerinas and stuff.
Yes.
Our marriage is in shambles, and you done sent him away. And so it's like she's trying to figure out what's going to be. She knows that he needed this to kind of regain his manhood, but it's actually at the cost of their relationship. What did you think about Elizabeth, the way she's treating the kids now? It seems like here it is when Philip was about to go away. Prince Charles shook his dad's hand goodbye, and Philip was like, "No, you can give me a hug now. The cameras aren't here." And Elizabeth still seems a little distant, so it still seems like Philip is the one who's the nurturing parent, and Elizabeth's like a little bit more distant. But with Philip away, I feel like she had to be a little bit more hands-on with the kids.
Well, let's talk about the concept of what Queen Elizabeth sees as her role and what she sees of herself.
Right.
We've seen a more mature Queen Elizabeth take the mantle of queendom and take it to the next level. She's finally becoming the queen that the people deserve and the one that they want.
Right.
And not just because they need her. So in the role of queen, she even explains when she gets back with Margaret, her sister, she explains
Drunky drunk Margaret.
exactly. Margaret, who has become a drunk, and obviously her life has left her a little bit of a recluse and just not as loved as before.
And depressed.
And she's, of course, depressed and a bit of an alcoholic in terms. And Queen Elizabeth, to Margaret's contention that the reason she's not married is because of Queen Elizabeth.
Right.
Queen Elizabeth says, as your sister, I would have loved for you to get married.
Right.
But I'm the queen. And as the queen, you could not. And
Right.
in this family, that cannot happen.
Exactly. And it was funny how Margaret found a little joy in the fact that Elizabeth and Philip were having marital issues.
She was. And we'll definitely get to that. But
Yeah.
I want to talk about the role of Queen Elizabeth, the role of Queen Elizabeth, how she sees herself.
Right. I think she sees herself in two parts. It's like kind of like an out of body experience. Inside she feels like the person she was before, but it's like she's looking at this other person and she has to play this role all the time. And she has, unlike in season 1, she's become very comfortable in that role, and she too knows her power. So we see this battle within herself. And then it's also like, here it is, she sees this picture of this ballerina, and she can't just run up in her husband's office and scream at him before he leaves for this trip. She just stands by herself by the door and just holds in her anger, and then secretly goes and checks on this woman. So it's like she's battling within herself. She can't just express herself the way she wants to all the time. She's exhibiting a lot of restraint, but that would make me crazy.
But more than restraint, I feel like she's exhibiting discretion. And that's a new form, because the old Elizabeth wasn't as discreet as this new powerful Queen Elizabeth, the one where they say heavy is the crown. And we see this heaviness on her because she takes everything internally and doesn't always express it externally. And she keeps it to herself. She finds the picture of the ballerina as she leaves the gift of the video camera for her husband in his luggage, sees the ballerina, and automatically, because of his past, assumes infidelity. Whether it's true or not, of course, we don't know. We all assume that it is true.
I thought so.
But she doesn't say anything. You can tell something's wrong. But she doesn't say anything. Why? Not because she's Elizabeth, but because she is queen.
That's a good point. Because I was looking at it more like as a wife seeing this other woman in her husband's bag. Here she is trying to do a sweet, kind, loving gesture, putting a note and a gift in his briefcase before he traveled for many months and she won't see him, so he can remember her and think of his family. And then she gets smacked in the face with this image of this other woman. That hurts. So, but like I said, she can't scream at him, but then he's confused. So it's like their communication issues are also an issue within their marriage.
I don't know if the communication issue is so much a problem as it is an attitude problem.
Whose attitude? Her attitude or
Philip's
his?
Attitude mostly, because Philip knew what he was signing up for when he took the job.
Definitely.
And
her dad prepped him. He was like, do you understand what you're getting into? She is the job.
Exactly. And he knew this, and he has what we see is a bit of an ego. Philip likes to be the man. And now he doesn't feel like he's the man. And I don't just mean as in a masculine energy, but he also likes to showboat. He likes to show off. And we see that on his trip. And what did you think about the trip itself?
The boys' tour? I thought it was interesting because I got to see Philip in a whole new light. When he needed to say, listen, I want this done, and he got some pushback, he stood his ground. We also saw him as a leader. We saw him in his happy place on a boat. I'm happy on a boat. You know, that scenery was beautiful, so how could you not be happy? But what bothered me was he was so happy away from his family for a long time until Christmas. So it was interesting seeing him be a leader, have this joy in his life. Also, Philip's like a fun-loving guy. Like he reminds me of Harry in the sense, like he's the party guy. You know what I'm saying? He's the guy's guy. He's the one like, let's have a beard growing competition. Don't drink all the beer. But I respect the fact that he understands, listen, there are certain things that I have to do. I have to go to the Olympics. I have to continue to, follow through with my duties so I don't embarrass my wife. And wasn't it creepy? Like every time Philip would be doing something bad, they'd pan to the shot of Elizabeth's picture in his office, which it's like she's always watching him. But at the same time, sometimes he was like, I don't care. I'm still going to do what I want to do.
Well, when it came to episode 2, I think he was actually on much better behavior than most of us thought. But in episode 1, we didn't actually get to see Philip do any of this. We just know that he's going on this trip. So the idea of what this trip meant is Philip would finally get some shine. Philip would be a place of importance, and he started becoming excited about going on this trip.
But initially he
did not.
Yeah, there was some pushback because he's like, you're sending me away. Oh my gosh, you know what? He probably felt like he was being sent away, like when he was sent away as a child. And I want to get into that because I feel like there are a lot of connections.
I promise you. Say, did you really just like episode 2? We're gonna get into episode 2.
Okay, sorry. I
promise you. We will talk.
It was of the 2. It was my favorite. I feel because that's where I was like, okay, it's coming together now. So
it is all coming together.
Sorry, I'm just jumping ahead. So
but
excited.
When it comes to the trip, we also meet Mike Peters.
Shady Mike.
Who's just he's just that friend. And we all know that friend. Every girl out there knows that friend. If you watch Three's Company, he's the Larry. Like he's just that friend.
He's the wingman.
He is the wingman, but more importantly, he's not just the wingman, he's the co-pilot that wants to help the plane crash. And that's what the problem is because he's not a positive influence. And we hear about Mike's reputation when Elizabeth and Margaret are having their meeting. Why? Because Margaret pours more salt to that open wound and says, oh, you know about Mike, right? The secretary. Mike's he hooks up guys with trips and ballerinas.
Parties,
and specifically says ballerinas.
Yeah, Elizabeth said it, and Margaret was like, "Oh, how do you know that?" And that's what I loved. I loved Elizabeth showing her sister, like, "Yes, I know things. You might not think I know what's going on, but I do."
But Margaret was also trying to bait her sister because she felt that resentment towards Elizabeth for not allowing
Totally.
her to marry. And she feels like all of this is her fault.
Yeah, misery loves company.
And she enjoyed Elizabeth being miserable at that time.
Totally.
But when it comes to Mike, Mike is the guy going on the trip, and this is not the guy you want your girl going, you don't want your man going on a trip with.
Not at all.
If you're a girl, you don't want Mike being, you're going with Mike?
Yeah.
To the library?
Mike from the club?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Mike's his club friend, literally.
It is.
Mike's wife is unhappy about this. She's already like...
And that's a distinction because now we see two separate marriages. We
Right.
have Philip and Elizabeth who are not having a good time but still seem to be in love. And then Mike and Eileen who are on the verge of breaking up. And she's not, Elizabeth's happy Philip's going on the trip.
Right.
Eileen is miserable and frustrated and wants to kill Mike.
I mean, she's just like, so you're going to forget our anniversary. You're going to forget our kid's birthday. He's like, oh, no, I got you. I'm going to call. Poor thing.
Does not call.
Baby girl is like, does daddy not love me anymore? Like, why did he not call me on
His
my
daughter
birthday?
definitely going to grow up to be a stripper. Like, there's just nothing holding her down.
Poor
nothing.
thing, poor thing.
It's like, oh, daddy never paid attention.
I mean, and
all the daddies pay attention now. Like, it's going to be a thing.
The thing is, I had hope for Mike. I was like, he's gonna come through this time. He's gonna call. He may forget the anniversary, but he will call his baby girl on her birthday. And womp womp.
He
that
definitely,
did not happen.
definitely did not call the baby girl.
Yeah.
Totally missed that phone call. Totally missed that phone call. And another thing Mike did, which was interesting, is that when Mike spoke to his wife, Philip complains. Mike tries to gloss things over.
Right.
They're very different in character.
Yeah.
Because Philip still has redeeming qualities.
Totally.
And Mike barely has any redeeming
Mike
qualities.
gives no F's at all. He does not care about anyone but himself. I think he's loving this new job. He's loving the title that he has, and he's loving all the perks that come with it. He doesn't have to do the hard work like Philip does and be in front of the people, but he gets to reap all the rewards.
He's the guy who, and he specifically says, tails I win, heads you lose. And when it's heads, he's like, heads, your wife, you lose.
Right.
And has Philip drive.
Yeah, he has no respect for the institution of marriage at all, and he does not want to be married anymore.
Well, but he does want to be married.
You think
he just
so?
wants to have his cake and eat it too.
Okay, true,
Because he
true.
doesn't want Eileen to live.
Right.
And leave and
Right.
live her best life.
Right.
He wants to live his best life.
Yeah,
And he
without
can't wait to get on this first class trip with the Duke.
Yeah.
Like, this is his existence.
Mm-hmm.
He's kind of weaseled his way in, and actually they founded this club, which we come to find out, this Porter's Club, the Thursday Social Club, which is a group of Matt Lauers and Harvey Weinsteins.
dang.
They are though. They're just it's like this club of just wealthy socialites.
Right.
Who it's the ultimate white privilege. It's the ultimate wealth privilege. It's everything
Boys
in
club.
one. It's the boys will be boys club.
Yeah. Yeah, and the women are there to serve them and get their behind smacked.
Yes,
And
and,
then
we
serve them
see
some
that.
more. Yeah.
And that's the thing. And we see the girls are just their playthings, and that's how the society was running then. And now we see a very interesting dichotomy of how it's actually kind of running now. But now,
Like, it
we have-
hasn't ended. That club has not closed. It's
Exactly.
only continued in other countries. It's spread. It's global now.
and it's something that we have to be aware of. There are places like this that exist today.
Totally.
There are golf clubs in Beverly Hills that play this game on a daily
Secret
basis.
societies that do this all the time.
And Mike, which we see in episode 2, is writing letters back to the social club of their...
Now, what'd you think about that? Mike spilling the tea, like giving all the scoop. I mean, I found it interesting that things that you would think he'd want to hide and keep in secret, he was writing letters and sharing with everyone.
And that's how I know you're not a guy. Because what guys do is text their conquest. So in that day and age, it was a letter.
Okay.
And now it's a text of
And sometimes a
the
Snapchat
naked
video.
girl. Exactly.
Got it.
So it's the same thing, just Mike is a show-off. Mike is a fuckboy. That's
Okay.
what he is.
Okay.
And that's how he's living his life.
Yeah.
And we see a lot more of that in episode 2, which
I
we
love.
get. But this transition between episode 1 and episode 2 doesn't come down to the relationship. It doesn't come down to the infidelity. It comes down to the political situation in the UK at the time.
Yeah.
Egypt has a new leader, General Nasser. And General Gamal Nasser takes over from the monarchy in 1952, comes in and basically tries to nationalize everything in Egypt and takes back the Suez Canal in 1956 in October.
Right.
And that was a big point of contention in Middle East global political struggle of power. It's actually a situation amongst others like Iran's democratic movement with Mossadegh and naturalization of oil that came to include more significant British, UK, French, and especially American involvement in the Middle East.
So the effects of this
We see today.
We still see the effects today.
We see it today.
Yeah.
Every time there's ISIS, anything that goes on, it's really from this 50s era of the power vacuum and struggle that was in the Middle East,
Right.
from transitioning from monarchs to democratic, oligarchic, or theocratic elections, and
Right.
that feeling of westernizing too fast or not, and being taken advantage of. Now, that's a very important part, because
Definitely.
Queen Elizabeth, in talking to the new Prime Minister, Anthony becomes the Prime Minister.
Yeah.
Which
he wanted so
he did
badly.
want it.
And
He
then-
wanted it very badly.
But I'm not sure if he was the man for this job after the
we
way he
see
handled
that
that.
we see that he's not the man for this
Yeah.
job, because he goes on to not be half of the man that Winston Churchill is,
Right.
Especially in terms of respect of the party, in terms of decision making.
Yeah, and the way he's operating in secrecy when he could have been on the up and up, and his approach to, I mean, in the same way, I guess he tried to hide things from Elizabeth to, I guess, I don't know if it was to protect her or more to just go along with
it
his
was
agenda.
because his agenda was to gain that foothold and get out of Winston Churchill's
Definitely.
shadow, and we see that. So the Suez Canal, which is an important strip, which is basically, if you know about canals, it's what cuts countries in half so that we can travel. And
Right.
that travel cuts time. One big canal, for example, the Panama Canal, which we have in the Americas, cut travel by a third, because
Right.
now they just travel through Panama. And that's a whole big thing in American history,
Right.
of how American takeover and Manuel Noriega and everything else. So let's go. We see this exact same political point when in the 50s with the Suez Canal.
Right.
The Suez Canal, which the French and the British own the most shares of the incorporation, of course.
Right.
And they basically built it on the back of Egyptians.
Right, and the Egyptians were like, no more, no thank you, no sir. But then here it is, you have Anthony Eden, who decides, okay, we're gonna, let's go to war.
Let's collude with France and Israel.
Right.
And France already
In
had
secret.
a beef. They had a beef with Egypt because Egypt supported Algeria's movement for freedom.
Right.
And they all collude.
Right.
They collude because Israel had come into play after World War II and wanted to be a player in the region. We have France that has enigmatic ties with England, and also has a lot of interest in this canal.
Right.
And then we have a prime minister in England who wants to show his power and step out of the shadow of his
this is like
predecessor.
one of his, he wants to be remembered for
Exactly.
this. But what I loved about this is when Philip got word of this, he tried to warn Elizabeth, like, are you sure? Like, make sure he doesn't do this. And she didn't understand it. He tried to explain to her, like, listen, based on my experience from being in the war, and knowing how ships work, this is how this is going to go. You should listen to me. But she chose to do something else. Why do you think she chose to side with Anthony Eden?
She had no choice. See, that's the part that people don't understand of the Queen or the monarchy in England. The monarchy of England doesn't have true political power. They have
Right.
influence because they're
But why do you think she
popular.
didn't even voice, like, listen, I'm uncomfortable with
Because
this?
she's uncomfortable with political matters. And we see that when she meets with Anthony Eden on the first meeting where he explains it to her and she glosses over it. And
I think she
looks
was
uncomfortable.
I think she was uncomfortable only because she still had this Philip issue on the brain, and so she was like, okay, I can't really deal with this right now too much, because Philip did put a bug in her ear, like, this is how this is really going to work. But I feel like she she also wanted Britain to have like this if they won, it would have looked good on them. So
I don't think so.
You
And
don't
I'll
think
tell you
so?
why. Because we see in season 1 that she's very uncomfortable with political
But
matters.
she's grown
She's
since then.
grown, but she hasn't finished growing. And
She
we
still
see
has
that
some-
because
yeah.
she becomes more politically knowledgeable after the failure of the invasion.
Right.
And that's when she's like, wait a minute, what's going on?
I think she always knows that like we are Britain, we influence the entire world, and this was an opportunity for them to kind of show the little man like, listen, we're gonna you can't tell us what to do, we're gonna tell you what to do.
And I disagree with that point because I think as the sovereign, what she saw was we're going into a possible war very close and shortly after the previous war, which was World War II,
Right.
which left Britain
And people were
the
still
world in
scarred.
ruins.
Yeah.
Exactly. And she wanted a peaceful solution,
Yeah.
if possible. But Anthony Eden is the prime minister,
Yeah.
and he knows best.
But Anthony, here you go you starting this war and you can barely handle it. What were all those pills about? Like he was sick?
He was sick. He was suffering from a stomach ailment and some type of like a blood thing, and he was just
If anybody
ordered apparently
To go to
by his doctor
Jamaica.
at the worst part to go to Jamaica.
But which I love because I have my mom's Jamaican, so I was like, oh, you going to the land of my people, Anthony? Let me come with you.
I'm glad you loved it because the people of Britain actually almost revolted, and they
You
were
know,
protesting.
Jamaica's
And they
a
were very
lovely
upset.
place.
It is a lovely place, and it was also. And what the trip that Philip takes shows you is how much of the world that the UK is still in charge of.
Totally.
To this day.
Totally.
People forget this often.
No, even thinking about how like Jamaican people that I grew up with handle situations in a very conservative and restrained way, I do think it's because of the British influence.
I mean, of course, there's also a colony. Even to this day, if you go to Canada, it's not like their good-looking prime minister is on the money. No, it's the Queen.
Right.
Because that is their sovereign, regardless of
That's what I'm
their
saying. I feel like
independence.
Elizabeth was like, no, we're the big boy in this fight. You're going to bow down to us.
But she didn't even have knowledge of the situation. So that's why I disagree.
Okay, because she wasn't
didn't
as
even understand.
knowledgeable
She
about
didn't
it.
know what was going on. She understood kind of the location. But if you
Right.
see, when they talk about geography and they're saying, where's Greenland? It's north, north, north.
Right,
It's
they
not, where's Greenland? Where are the places? She's not as knowledgeable about these things as she should be.
Yeah.
So that's why when you say she wanted a certain way, she had no opinion.
I think that-
her opinion grows through the episode. and we see
Definitely.
it.
I think she just made a rash decision like, okay, Britain, we're the winner. That's what we're going to do.
So going on to season 2,
Episode two.
episode 2. So now we see that episode 2 is a continuation, and we flip.
Yeah.
We flip because episode 1 we barely see Philip, and now we see a lot of
All of
Philip.
Philip, yeah.
We see a lot of Philip.
We see Philip get upset with that
Captain.
the reporter too.
Oh, of course.
Helen
Okay,
King.
so Helen. So with the reporter, Helen is like the Barbara Walters of her time, right? So she comes in and she gives this.
She's like the
she
voice
takes
of
this
the
interview.
Australian people.
She uses her ways, and also when we come to Australian people, let's remember the little subtle hint comments. The Australians are this isn't now where it's like you're 5 generations removed from
Right.
the criminality of what Australia was as a penal colony. This is a couple generation where there's this underlying tone like, oh, they're Australian. Right? So Philip sees a chance to be with a beautiful woman.
Australian woman, so he hasn't had one of those on his list.
And he's like, oh, I'm going to knock her down. She comes in and she's extremely knowledgeable, and she gets Philip with all these questions about his past. And we learn so much about Philip
much.
in this. We learn his sister, the Nazi, is married to a high-ranking Nazi, which came up in
His
season 1,
favorite
but
sister.
earlier. Then the other sister died in a plane crash, and then the mother went crazy.
the daddy never came around. He never saw his
The
dad.
daddy had a mistress. All these things that just played like she just knew how to push his buttons, but was looking for the exclusive.
Yeah.
And used her charms to get in that room. But once that door was closed, she became Helen.
Barbara Walters.
Yeah, she
Yeah.
became Helen, who was
you
just
see,
the
you
most
see how
dangerous
Mike
woman on the
let
planet.
Philip down. He was supposed to be like looking out for him, but he also, I guess, just said Philip wanted to have this woman in his presence alone. Instead of Mike saying, "Hey, yo, this might not be a good look," he's like, "Sure, let me set this up for you," and he has to
Because
clean up the mess at the
Mike's
end.
whole being is to stay in Philip's favor.
Right.
So if the the queen's husband wants a chick. He's bringing in a chick. Like, that's how he thinks.
Yeah.
And we see that because he caters to Philip and caters to Philip's
every need
wants.
and whim. Yeah.
And also what he does is he tries to be that guy in front of everyone. Look at me, I'm popping bottles on the table.
Right.
That's who Mike's being is. And then Philip comes out of that room and says to Mike, the next time this happens, make sure to keep my vanity in check.
Yes, which I loved. He learned
let the
a lesson.
vanity get the best
And
of
that's what I love about Philip. He learns from his mistakes.
He does learn.
Like, even though he's a cheating husband, I feel
Allegedly.
allegedly. I have a soft spot for him. I
But
still
because
feel
he
sorry
has
for
these
him.
redeeming qualities.
Exactly.
And this is what we see in episode 2, is that there is a redeemable Philip.
Yeah.
There is a good guy in there. And we see this when he saves the captain from the ship that was
Yes,
shipwrecked.
and takes him back home
They
to
get
his
a wreck
island.
call, and they're like, we're the closest ship, let's go.
Yeah.
And then he gets into a pissing match
Yeah.
with the captain of the ship, and he's like, well, you know what? Here's the thing. I'm the admiral of the Navy,
Right.
so whatever I say goes. And the guy's like, well, I'm the captain. My say is final. And then he says, you want to play this? You want
Right.
to play this? Oh, look at my penis. It's way bigger than yours. And he wins.
And he's like, listen, I've actually done the work. I know what to do, so we're going to do
And he
this.
did throw that in there. He threw in, he said, while you were on shore
Yeah.
and just chilling in World War II, I was actually manning guns.
I was in the
And so
Navy.
my record shows
Exactly.
who I am.
Yeah.
We're going to do what I say. And they take him back. And we see a Philip who, yeah, he dances with a girl. But you know what? Every time we see infidelity, it's Mike. It's never Philip.
Definitely.
And that was on purpose.
Yeah, and we see also that Mike's wife is done. She is getting all she needs to file this divorce because she's adamant that she wants to file this divorce.
She meets with the lawyer and talks about it, and that's the shot that's heard through the world, because it gets all the way back to Michael, Queen Elizabeth's secretary, about this divorce.
Michael Adine and Martin.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they all. It's like there are no secrets at all. But what I loved was the girl power between the waitress and the wife. She was like, okay, I'm not going to embarrass myself, but I am going to give you the evidence that you need to move forward with this divorce. And I was like, gosh, back then it was so hard for a woman just to get out of a happy marriage. Like, you would have to suffer. If she could not find that evidence, she would just have to suffer and let this man continue to make her unhappy.
It's not that easy to get divorced right now. Actually,
Depending
there has
on
to
the
be
state.
there has to be
Because there are no fault states.
Sure, but you still have to wait a year.
Not all the time.
If you live in the United States.
Not all the time. You have to wait 6 months.
Who have you divorced?
Don't worry about my business.
Who have you divorced?
Don't worry about my business. You know your things. I know
So
my
unless
things.
you have extenuating circumstances, you have to wait a year. You have to not
states.
see someone during that year. You have
have
to
to-
try to work on it
Yeah.
and try to get back together and make it work. And it has to be for a reason. If you're not having sex, or he or she
The
cheated.
grounds are different.
Exactly,
Yeah,
but
definitely.
it's still not that easy. It's not like you
Yeah,
walk
but it
in
was
and you're
more. I
divorced.
feel like it was more difficult.
Of course, because it's not just legal; it's also societal pressure. So you
right.
double it.
And then this wasn't a regular Joe Schmo. She was about to divorce. That's why the attorney was like trying to advise her against it. It was a gentleman that worked, under the Queen. So.
Yeah, he was
made it.
definitely trying to dissuade her and was like, "Hey, unless you have proof, we're not just going to go forward
Yeah.
with this." And she meets with this waitress and convinces her, because the waitress at first is like, "I don't know your husband,"
Yeah.
because she's afraid of losing her job, which is probably very well paying for that time and
Definitely.
for her place in society.
Mm-hmm.
And also, she didn't want to get caught up in this mess. This is a messy divorce with a messy person. But what
Right.
she does do is she brings those letters and gives them to Eileen.
We see in both of these episodes letters having such power. Elizabeth gave her husband a letter in secret, and then that actually helped and made him soften up towards her. And here it is, this waitress gives the wife this letter that,
Letters. She gets all of them.
oh, I thought she just gave her
No,
that
she
one.
gave them she's like, everything you need is in those letters.
Oh, I thought it was just that
Yeah,
last
I think
letter.
she realized, these are the letters, and she
Right.
collected them and just gave it to her.
But the letters have all the information.
Because he's just been trying to show off for his boys back at the club, and they read them out loud, and yeah,
Right, and let's not forget.
Bitches!
Exactly. Here it is. This marriage is falling apart.
It
The
is.
country is falling apart because
the
this
same
war
time.
in Egypt has been a disaster.
It's eating up the country.
Eating
And
out the prime minister's stomach, obviously, because he can't handle it. He's
he
sick.
can't handle it, and he takes a leave of absence. And when he does that, we see that his advisors are supposed to come and fill the role, but it's a failure, and it's a failure that looks more like, not only is it a military failure, it's a PR failure for Britain. Britain is no longer this superpower, and it's actually the point of contention in which the United States becomes this industrial power and steps up to the plate and helms the United Nations, and helms and becomes the power in the world.
Yeah, because he did not even get approval from the United Nations. And it's just so interesting with this show because these people are still alive and we're still seeing the effects of these actions. Like, we're watching a show, we're watching a portrayal of what happened, but these people, you can go and check this information online and see how it's continuing to affect us all.
And then it concludes with Philip, who had this wonderful time being away, actually misses his wife.
I know.
And misses his family.
I thought that was beautiful. This Christmas announcement.
And they give these speeches.
Right. And what I loved was when Elizabeth was told that she had to make this, that Philip was going to make this announcement, she asked why. She's always asking why. She doesn't let
I don't think she's asked why in that manner. She asked why out of jealousy. Like, why? Isn't that just weird? I don't want him to, because she doesn't like him
senses
shining as much.
Something told her something's off.
No, because
women's intuition.
Also, well, it's more like women's jealousy, because she also felt a certain type of way when she watched the television and saw him at the Olympics.
But look, when
and
he
she
called
felt
her,
like, why is he getting all this like he's feeling it too much. And
I know,
she doesn't
but
want him because she thinks he'll get a big head.
But also when he called her, she was so happy to almost have the opportunity to hear his voice.
And then when she didn't, she was annoyed, like, this PR. So it's not that I disagree with that point. I think she just didn't want him to shine, because when he did give the speech, no.
She's just annoyed with the whole, I think it's the infidelity, the idea of, and she doesn't have evidence like this wife does to say it. She doesn't have proof. She's just letting this stew and creating all these situations in her head. And that can be worse sometimes, because you never know what's going on.
But she does know that she's still married to this man, and that giving the speech, as Michael points out, will at least they haven't been seen together.
Right.
Will at least allow it so that, hey, we can be heard together. You two can be heard together, and it's nice. And Philip doesn't want to give the speech because he doesn't like all the rules that he's still getting while he's a million miles away.
Yeah, but you know what I just thought about? Here I go with the letters again. Their Christmas speeches to each other were kind of like love letters to each other.
There was definitely a subtle, secret words to one another.
Yeah.
Philip saying,
it was very romantic.
Secretly, hey, I actually miss you and miss being home. And Queen Elizabeth saying, you will always have a home here. And
the people around her were like, what's going on? Why is she softening up? But it shows that she understands, again, it's that dual role that she has to play. I'm a wife to this man that is suffering in a sense right now, and I need to keep my marriage intact, so I'm going to do this.
It plays a part in which we see this blossoming love story, and we'll see what happens, hopefully in episodes 3 and 4, but I doubt that we'll get anything until episode 10. So, thank you once again for watching.
Hello, and thank you for being with us. Stay tuned. We have some other guest hosts coming on next week.
We do.
Our next episodes.
We do.
Find me on social media. My name is Tsahai, and you can find me at Say Hi Tsahai. That's SayHiTsahai.
And of course, you can find me at I Am Tehran all across the board. A lot of you do, and tell me how wrong I am each and every week. Please continue to do so. I appreciate each and every one of you. Your love and support means a lot to me. I feel regal just saying things of this nature. That's right. So make sure to check us out. We're going to be doing episodes 3 and 4 Tuesday, and then putting that out and letting you know what we thought of that. Thank you so much for watching with us, and keep watching The Crown.
See you on the next episodes.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.